Welcome to Navigraph Academy, an instrument flying course. Here we'll teach you how to fly in really poor weather conditions. In the soup, as pilots would say. Flying without external references is one of the most thrilling challenges that a pilot can take on. You'll gain the skills needed to master true instrument-only flight. Few moments compared to the thrill of breaking through dense clouds and watching the runway lights appear before you. Let's get started. This is the first lesson in the instrument flying course, and we'll begin with the basics of instrument flight. Let's first start looking at how to maneuver the aircraft without external references and how that differs from flying visually. If you've taken our virtual private pilot's license course, you'll know how much we've stressed using visual nose attitudes to maneuver accurately. When we enter a cloud, we lose this possibility, and we have to shift our focus over to the instrument. Thus, your first goal is to learn how to use your flight instruments to guide the basic maneuvers such as climbs, turns and descents. In later videos, we'll explore how to find our way around the world using the instruments alone, as well as how we approach and land at airports using the instrument landing systems. But in order to be able to do this, you will first need to perfect your instrument flying skills. So let's get to work. Every instrument-rated pilot began their training by learning how to transition from external references to relying solely on their instruments. This task is actually even more challenging in a real plane, since G-forces, inertia and the feeling of seat of the pants give subtle cues about the attitude of a real plane. However, such feelings rarely tell the truth about the orientation of the plane. For example, a plane in a steady turn has a G-force that acts opposite to the lifting force. And as we know, the lifting force is perpendicular to the wings. Of course, in a turn, the G-force is not orientated with the reel down, which is always towards the center of the earth. But to the pilot, things are not so clear. Sitting in the plane and without external references, the pilot only senses the felt force, resulting as a reaction due to the lift. To them, this felt force is indistinguishable from the force of gravity. To the pilot, down is where the seat is. The real down is unknown to them. Therefore, the instruments must become our primary reference for determining the bank and the pitch. In the simulator, we are not exposed to the same conflicting feelings of balance as real-life pilots are, but we nevertheless need to trust our instruments just as much. Now, looking at the primary flight display of the Cessna 172, we can see that there is a lot of information presented. We are interested in what is called the primary flight instruments. The main and most important instrument is the artificial horizon, which is also sometimes called the attitude indicator. The artificial horizon shows both pitch, positive and negative, as well as the bank angle. To assist the artificial horizon, we can refer to the airspeed indicator, the altimeter, and the heading indicator. These instruments help us determine if we are flying accurately enough. For example, if we are maintaining altitude and heading in a level flight segment. Think of these instruments as the scoring tables. They tell us if we've done a good enough job of flying our target bank and pitch through the artificial horizon. Thus, the artificial horizon replaces the outside view, and the other instruments form our cross-check for determining whether we are maintaining proper pitch and bank angles. At the core of any instrument flight is the so-called basic T-scan. This calls for the eyes to scan the instruments one by one in a specific order. In this order, we keep our eyes fixed on the artificial horizon almost all the time, while also making regular and short glances down, to the left, and to the right. And this forms a path that resembles the letter T. Let me explain the basic idea behind this scan. The artificial horizon replaces the outside horizon. However, we have to keep in mind that the level of accuracy is lower on the instrument compared to looking outside at the real visual horizon. A pitch of 10 degrees is shown as a relatively small angle on the screen, as shown here, but it amounts to a very steep pitch angle when we are looking outside. This means we need to pay close attention to our pitch and bank angles on the artificial horizon if we are to maintain accurate airspeeds, altitudes and turn rates during maneuvering. Thus, you should practice keeping your eyes on the artificial horizon for around 90% of your scanning time. For the rest of the time, we scan the three basic air data instruments at regular intervals. To give a few examples, the altimeter and its best friend, the vertical speed indicator, will tell us if we are maintaining altitude. The airspeed indicator will tell us if our pitch is correct for a climbing turn, targeting the climb speed of Vy. And the heading indicator will tell us if we've drifted away from a chosen course due to an inadvertent small bank angle.
So as Martin mentioned, there are significant risks associated with the bodily feelings occurring in zero visibility flying conditions. So let me explain. Consider this airplane in level flight. Here, the G-force is aligned with the reel down. The balance system correctly senses the direction towards the ground. Now, let's consider what happens in a turn. If we compare the two states, we see that there is no difference in the felt forces. Both act straight down into the pilot's seat of the pants. Now, if the pilot simply trusts what they experience, they will also feel as if they are in level flight. But let's now consider the pilot who believes they are in level flight, while they're actually slowly rolling to one side. Once a roll develops, some loss of altitude is expected. When seeing this, the pilot will begin to instinctively pull back on the yoke. This only tightens the turn and does nothing to arrest the increasing bank angle. The pilot, still only feeling the downwards G-force and now seeing an increasing negative vertical speed, believes they need to pull even more on the yoke. Soon, lift acts mostly in the horizontal and a steep spiral occurs. Unless the pilot regains spatial orientation and realizes they're in a turn, the spiral may go out of control and result in the plane crashing. Unfortunately, many real-life accidents have occurred due to this spiral, often called a graveyard spiral, due to the grave risks involved. For example, it's believed that John F. Kennedy Jr., son of American President John F. Kennedy, died from entering a spiral dive while flying in poor weather conditions back in 1999. The saying in aviation is therefore, always trust your instruments. Real-life flying sensations can never be accurately replicated in a simulator, and even large simulators like this one struggle to be accurate in all situations. Just keep this in mind when you're practicing, and never assume you can enter real-life instrument flying conditions solely based on experience gained in a flight sim. Let's now hear from our Academy flight instructor Jason and how he performs the different instrument maneuvers.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Cessna 172. We're flying some pretty poor weather today. Shortly, we'll enter this cloud right here and be fully immersed in IMC. That is, instrument meteorological conditions. All right, here we go. As we enter the soup, it's time to begin our scan. Looking down and starting my basic T on the artificial horizon, I can see that I'm maintaining a pitch angle of approximately 2.5 degrees. Scanning my altimeter, I see that the altitude is stable. Our vertical speed indicator is showing no change. That's great. We're also interested in our heading indicator, as on this particular day, I am navigating towards a GPS determined point on this heading. Thus, I need to keep an active scan on the heading indicator and the heading bug to make sure we are not slowly turning away from our course. However, the airspeed indicator is not that interesting for me right now. I have my cruise power of 2300 RPM set. As long as we maintain altitude and a 0-degree bank angle, we will get whatever cruise speed the Cessna can give me. Thus, my basic T-scan in a level flight segment mostly cuts out the airspeed indicator, and I focus on the other two instruments. This method, cutting out one or two instruments, is called selective scanning, and it improves your accuracy in instrument flying conditions. Try memorizing the pitch angle of 2.5 degrees for your flight. This is the pitch to maintain level flight in normal conditions, with a 2300 RPM set. If you fly with another power setting, you'd have to experiment to find the new pitch angle that maintains altitude. Okay, nice. We're coming up on the GPS point, and it's time to turn. When turning in clouds, according to international standards, all instrument turns are required to be done according to the standard rate turn. A standard rate turn means turning 3 degrees per second for a full 360-degree turn in 2 minutes. To make it a bit complicated, the bank angle required to achieve this increases with increasing speed. However, as a rule of thumb, you can divide your current forward speed by 10, and then we add 7, since we're flying at close to 100 knots today, we will get 17 as our answer. This gives us an approximate bank angle to achieve a standard rate turn. To make it simple, let's aim for 15 degrees and begin the turn. Here we go. As I enter the turn, I remember that I have to add a small pitch-up force to counter the loss of vertical lift. Raise our nose a bit and then scan our altimeter. As you can see, we're now maintaining altitude. It's very nice. I refrain from trimming here. Hold the pitch control slightly aft instead. Trim will cause us to have a retrim again once we level out on the new heading. All right, keep the scan alive. Most of the time, I watch the artificial horizon. I see 15 degrees of bank up here. No change of altitude. Good. Note that there is also a standard rate turn indicator here. It is somewhat finicky and prone to overreaction. But when we're at a standard rate turn, this little curved purple bar hits this white line. This is sometimes called the worm, as it worms in and out of its hidey hole up here at the top of the heading indicator. As we approach my heading, I need to start preparing to exit my turn. Let's reduce bank. I'm back level, and we check that all instruments look good. Great. The selective scan in a turn was thus focused on the altimeter, and then when we approached the desired heading, the heading indicator. Let's initiate a climb here. Like in visual flying conditions, we try to target the best rate of climb speed. That's Vy. Remember, as I add power, I need to kick in some right rudder to compensate the slipstream effect. Simultaneously, I pitch up to my best guess at a climb pitch attitude. We trim and let the airspeed trail down. We're now aiming for Vy. As airspeed trails off, I need a retrim. It's essential that I keep my eyes focused on the pitch attitude. There we go, we're stable. And speed seems to settle at 75 knots. I now have to check the heading indicator. If we banked inadvertently or flew somewhat uncoordinated after that surge of slipstream, we may have drifted. So I correct it straight away. It's a good idea to use the heading bug to align ourselves with the target heading. There we go. The scan now selectively scans heading and airspeed most of the time. Correct airspeed keeping is the primary goal of the climb, and it determines whether we need to change our pitch. I am targeting 4,500 feet as a new altitude here. I can use the altimeter bug available by turning this down here to set a reminder when we approach it. As we do, we need to start scanning the altimeter more actively. A good rule of thumb is to start leveling off about 50 feet before we reach our desired altitude. But of course, this depends on vertical speed and rate of pitch change. I start leveling out. Now we retrim. We let the airspeed build up to cruise speed, and then we reduce power to 2300 RPM. Again, we need a retrim due to the changed pitch tendency due to loss of slipstream. Nice job. Let's make sure it all looks good. On altitude, on heading, RPM is set, no vertical speed, we're back in level flight. So in a climb, the selective scan focused on the airspeed indicator and the heading indicator, with the altimeter becoming interesting only closer to reaching our level off altitude. Descents work much the same way, but are somewhat easier than climbs. Due to the small change in power, we try to always use power on descents in instrument conditions. We simply reduce power to 1800 RPM, reduce the pitch somewhat. We scan the coordinator and heading bug to ensure we're stable, and then we trim. The altitude bug goes down, and we keep our T-scan while we wait to arrive at the new altitude. Nice job. Some final notes before we move on to the final, more complex maneuver. Selective scan in turning climbs and descents requires us to focus on several instruments simultaneously. For example, in a climbing turn, you'd want to scan the altimeter when you get close to the target altitude. But if that occurs at the same time as you're coming up on the new heading, you'd have to scan both the heading indicator and the altimeter at the same time. Also, climbing and descending turns are performed at the standard rate turn of approximately 15 degrees. It can be a bit sweaty, but with practice, you'll master it in no time. Okay, let's go for the most significant challenge, entering slow flight in instrument flying conditions. This maneuver is tricky and requires finesse. It's a perfect way to practice your T-scan. As I prepare to enter my slow flight, I pick out a heading to maintain. I will set the heading bug on it. I will also aim for 65 knots in the slow flight maneuver. Here we go. We reduce power. Left rudder is needed to maintain coordination. As airspeed reduces, I must continually pitch up. I scan the altimeter closely, looking for any movement or indication of a climb or descent. I arrest any deviation with changes to the pitch attitude. As airspeed approaches 65 knots, I prepare to arrest the speed reduction with power. There we go. Scan the altitude, heading indicator, and airspeed. All is stable. If I saw a reduction in airspeed, I'd have to pitch down. Then I'd have to add a touch of power to maintain altitude. The corrections are now the same as we trained in our VPPL course. We keep our scan alive and work hard to maintain all parameters. I can now also elect to extend the flaps. Let's do that now. Flaps 10. Increase in power and pitch down a little bit. Scan the T and make sure we're all good. Nice job. Flaps 20, same thing. Increase power, pitch down, and scan. Here we go. Final flaps 30, increase power and pitch down. There we go. Good job. Let's return to normal cruise. I slowly and carefully apply full power. I meet with trim and pitch down somewhat. Flaps 20 as soon as I can. Airspeed is increasing. Let's go flaps 10. Airspeed above 80 knots, we'll go flaps to 0. A lot of trimming needs to happen now. I keep scanning my altimeter and arresting any changes with pitch. A quick glance at the heading indicator. Looking good here. Airspeed is coming up to cruise speed. We're reduced to 2300 RPM. More retrimming may be required here. And again, that very important T-scan. All looking good, maneuver is complete. Nice job. Instrument flying challenges both your discipline and your focus, but mastering it is one of the most rewarding milestones in aviation. It's now your turn to try this.
To get airborne right now, go to the Academy website and you can download all the in-game lessons for this course. On the website, you will also find great resources to further deepen your knowledge of instrument flying, using our extensive course material. All the Navigraph Academy courses are completely free, and you can access them today via the link provided in the description. If you did like this video, please leave us a like or a comment. That helps us keep creating free aviation content right here on YouTube. Now good luck with your first instrument flying session, and as always, see you out there.